Hey, I'm Dave Anthony, hosting this year's preseason Manitoba Junior Hockey League MGEU West Division panel. As we get ready to start this weekend, we got to look at one of the most interesting divisions in Canada, a very tight-knit MGEU West Division where anybody could win. We're very excited to have on the panel with us today from the Dauphin Kings, Darnell Duff, a broadcaster of all trades, the legendary Benny Walchuk, and Kevin Pauls. So very exciting times in the West, gentlemen. Darnell, let's start with the Dauphin Kings. Kind of a quieter offseason. They've tinkered here and there, but what is going on in Dauphin? Where's the confidence level at that the Kings can get back to the level of that championship contender that they always want to be?
Well, I think, Dave, there's a really good nucleus of players coming back from last year. I chatted with Rylan Gage earlier in the week. He's going to be a leader on this team this year. He point blank said it sucks how we lost the last couple of years in Game 7 2 years ago, and then of course in Game 7 of the league final last year. There is a very solid. Josh Schmidt is back. Sheldon Shayak on the back end. Ty Pratt, Brett Megerel, Daniel Hillary. So there's guys who have been war tested. They've gone through the grind of a long regular season and then an intense battle in the playoffs. And I really think Doug Headley has done a really good job of bringing in some guys who weren't on the roster last year that will really complement this team. Yes, it's a different team than it was 1 year ago because perhaps you don't have a Cole Sheffield to start, goaltender of the year. You do not have a Naaman Hofer, a defenseman of the year, but you have a lot of guys that will buy into the system. And this is going to be a team that if they wish to have success, they're going to have to play as a community. They're going to have to play as a full group. They're going to have to roll their lines, which I think they do have the ability to do so. It was a really intense camp, then straight into the preseason, which I saw some really good things from not only guys that will be here this year, but future Kings as well. So I think there's a pretty good vote of confidence heading into Friday night to get the season going.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you talk about the future because the teams I think are going to change so drastically year to year that it's important to get those young kids into some MJHL games, and I think we're going to see more 16-year-olds and some more APs throughout the year. Benny Walchuk, let's go to you. As you cover the Waywayseecappo Wolverines, the Swan Valley Stampeders, kind of all the West Division. Does Dauphin still have that aura about them where credit union place is a hard place to win in? Does Dauphin still have that aura where that when they come to your barn, they're walking in with their heads held high? Do they still have that, or does the West see them maybe a little vulnerable this year?
I think it bites. Yeah, like you don't have the top end talent like Darnell said, but you have those guys that are hard to play against, and it's always tough. I know sometimes it can be a little colder and maybe not as many people in the crowd, but whenever somebody comes in there, the arena's so nice there in Dauphin, and the kind of gets a little dark. So I think the atmosphere there is still going to draw a little bit of maybe a struggle or some hesitation from other teams, but I don't think they're as flashy at coming in as they were last year. Like you said, they lost a lot of talent and also maybe some ongoing talent that might take the step forward here this year. But I think it is pretty wide open. I don't think you can go into Dauphin and say, "Oh, this is the Dauphin Kings team." I think we're worried about them in the West Division. I think there's other teams that might take that step and maybe leapfrogging him this year.
That maybe benefit them though, Benny, that they're going in with less volume every night. That maybe they're going to be able to maybe sneak some points out on a nightly basis.
Absolutely, yeah. It's one of those things. Sometimes when you have top end talent, you rely on them a little bit too much. Like you rely on your netminder, you rely on your defense core, your power play, and things. But if you're more of a maybe structured more depth on your team, I think that it can help you going forward. So I think it might play into their advantage for sure. Because I think they're kind of getting underestimated a bit here this year, but just the way they were and how much success they've had the last couple of years.
Kevin Pauls, let's go to you and talk goaltending of the Dauphin Kings. Pretty interesting that they've plucked a couple of former Winkler Flyers in Yashishin and now Peters, which is really exciting. I like him as a goaltender, I tell you. Sorry, Perot. Take us through the thoughts of the Dauphin Kings goaltending, and is there going to be some expectations given who they're following after a couple of sensational seasons up there in Parkland?
You talk about big shoes to fill. Darnell mentioned earlier Cole Sheffield, what a fantastic young goaltender. But now you look at a kid like Bryson Yashishin, very familiar with him being a Morden kid, and good for him. This will be an opportunity for him to maybe get some starting time up there. Adding Perreault, I think, is a big deal too. Watching him at the Winkler Flyers camp, he was impressive in how he moved his feet. Very good post to post goaltender, very athletic goaltender. But I think Bryson Yashishin is in good shape this year. He's rounded into form very nicely, and now he'll get, maybe a little bit of confidence from not having to worry about those starts and seeing some good hockey and not having to play second fiddle to a guy like Cole Sheffield. So I think they're very well suited in net, and I think, the Dauphin Kings. They always find a way. They have that winning pedigree too. Like Darnell mentioned, a couple tough losses in game sevens, but I expect them to round back into form here this year.
Again, like they just have that way about them where they're always kind of there. And like Benny said, you walk in, whether it's loud or quiet, you know when you're playing the Dauphin Kings. Darnell, I just want to tee this up. When it comes to goal scoring and when it comes to defending, where is Dauphin feeling better? Is it that they can create offense without necessarily a top end scorer, or that they can defend better without necessarily a top end defenseman, at least a name defender? Which by committee is going to be more successful for the Dauphin Kings?
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by this defensive core for the Kings. Ty Pratt has mentioned back Brett Magriel, who's dealing right now with an upper body injury, but he's not going to miss too much action. Daniel Hilary, there's a lot of pieces on this back end. And with that being said, I think it's an interesting D core because these are all players who have the ability to chip in offensively and are all excellent skaters, which is why what I am intrigued by most. So I think this is a team that if they wish to have success, of course, you have to focus on goaltending, and that's going to be a really interesting battle between Yashishin and Perreault. I'm not sure who is the number one. It may change on a game-by-game basis because Perreault, we saw what he did last year in the U18 AAA League. He won basically every award you can win, and of course, league title. We saw what Yashishin did. But I think this is a D core on the Dauphin Kings. And I should mention as well Aiden Murray, who's sort of battling with an upper body injury right now, but he's a guy that likes to initiate into the offense as well. So I think this defensive core is going to be a catalyst. It's one that opposing teams can't sleep on because if they do sleep on them, they're going to transition themselves up to the offensive core, which I also believe has the capability of doing something pretty special this year as well. So I think it's a different club than last year, but I truly do believe this is a pretty dynamic Dauphin Kings roster.
Doug Headley builds a certain kind of team, and that, of course, is through speed, tenacity, and he loves a quick transition. So moving pucks from the defense to the forwards really quickly is going to be key. Darnell, to put a wrap on the Dauphin Kings, give us a player or two that maybe we haven't heard of yet that is going to be a fan favorite or a household name around the MJHL, and one that Dauphin Kings fans are going to enjoy watching this year.
You know what? I've already given him a nickname and I've already picked out his theme song. It's Ash Mitchellmore. Played last year in the Ontario Junior Hockey League. I got him as Macklemore as his nickname, and of course Thrift Shop, as I mentioned. But played with Caledon last year, had some pretty decent success. A really smooth skater, has a good shot, and likes to go hard to the net with some decent size. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. And then Nicholas Zaharias, a guy who had 3 goals in a preseason game. I know it's just a preseason and it's a sample of what you can have, but the coaching staff has been raving about his skill level and his tenacity and his work ethic. So looking forward to seeing what Mitchell Moore can do as well as Zaharias. Just 2 of the players I expect to have decent seasons here for the Kings if they wish to have success.
Previewing the MGEU West Division with Darnell Duff, Benny Walchuk, and Kevin Pauls. I'm Dave Anthony, and let's switch now to one of the most interesting teams from a distance, from over here on the East Division mainly, the Swan Valley Stampeders. Looking at last year, I really think it was a tale of 2 teams. When Josh Tripp came in, it seemed like a lot of things changed for the positive. Like a lot of good things happened. They started playing harder. The guys really seemed bought in. He's back again this year. Benny Walchuk, we'll start with you. Just your thoughts on a full season, a full off season of Tripp, and what that's going to mean to the Swan Valley organization.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Dave, they had a great second half. And like I said, at one point, I think they were 14 games out of the playoff spots, and they were well within 5 or 4 points there by the end. So they played some tremendous hockey, and guys just took next steps forward. Ben Groom had an excellent second half. They got Jake Giacobo in the trade that sent Will Monroe to Melfort. He was very, very good. And just some guys took steps forward. Riley Fiquette was much better. They picked up big Ethan McTavish, who came in, and he's actually lost 15 pounds. He's about 205, 210, so he's in great shape hitting in. And it's just the turnover momentum, not only going into the offseason, you're not sure with the landscape of junior hockey, how many guys you might get back or where they might be playing. And all but one player came back for the Swan Valley Stampeders. So the turnover was very, very good from last year's team into this year's team. So that just provides more momentum, more of a familiarity for some of these rosters. So I think it is, expectations are high here in Swan Valley. That they've missed the playoffs the last 2 years, which is unacceptable in Swan River. So I think this team is going to take that next step. I know there's still some question marks between the pipes and maybe where some of the goals would come from, but that usually solves itself here as the season goes on. So yeah, the excitement is pretty high in the Swan Valley. Josh, of course, new head coach and general manager officially. They brought back Mark Wolgar, who's a local guy, kind of retired, and he's just going to do this as a side gig as an assistant coach, and he's very, very well known in Swan River as well. So it's a kind of a breath of fresh air for the Swan Valley, and some expectations pretty high because it's playoffs or bust here for the Stampeders.
That's really interesting. And, we're not too far removed from Swan Valley being a championship contender. We forget maybe and overlook that wonderful run that they went on where they were a goal away. And, it wasn't that long ago. And the MJHL put out this summer, we had 5 different champions in the last 5 years. I mean, we could have had, 10 different ones in the last 10 or 8 in the last 10, and Swan could have just as easily been there. Darnell Duff with the Dauphin Kings, you go into that building, you know that any team needs to make their home ice a difficult place to play, especially when you're traveling up there from the east. But as a West guy yourself, speak to the importance of Swan Valley making that a difficult place to play and not making it, so enjoyable for players to go in and think it's going to be point night.
Teams have to ultra razor focus when you're going into the Centennial Arena. It's a smaller rink. The fans get on top of you. It's loud. They like to make it as loud as they can. And this is a Swan Valley team last year that lost so many games by a goal. They had leads going into the third period. They gave up those leads and ultimately fell down short. I think that's perhaps, as Benny mentioned, one of the biggest question marks is the goaltending going into the season, but you're going to sort of see how that shapes out in Stampeder land. But if Swan Valley wants to be a team that gets back into the postseason this year, they have to be a good team at the Centennial. Looking up and down their lineup, Ethan McTavish, 17 points last year. He's a big guy, but as Benny mentioned, dropped 15 pounds. I'm really interested to see, however, Crosby Harrison, pick of the Brandon Wheat Kings, had 66 points last year with the Winnipeg Thrashers playing AAA. He is a dynamic talent, super elusive, and has a really good shot as well. Interested to see how he transitions from AAA hockey into junior hockey, but all in all, Stampeder territory. It's tough to win hockey games there, although you look at the standings last year and their record on home ice wasn't very good, but that's just byproduct of the end of the season record. So I think Swan Valley is going to crank things up this year. And if teams like the Kings, for instance, are going to Swan River on Friday to play at the Centennial, they have to be ready to play from puck drop because the Stamps are going to come out firing. Everybody has an 0-0 record. They're going to look to start off on a bang.
And I think it's important for Swan too to get those wins against the East too. When teams are traveling, when teams are on the second night of a back-to-back. I know everybody plays back-to-backs in this league, but I think defending home ice on like a 3-3 night homestand, I think is going to be really important this year. And Kevin Paul's just the mentality of the Swan Valley Stampeders going into this year is going to be different. How much does that play a factor? Guys are excited to go to the rink. They want to be around teammates. They want to be a part of this organization. And that picked up steam towards the end of last year. How much does that roll over into this year? Because like Benny said, they do have a lot of returning guys. So they got to be pretty excited to go to the rink, and we should see that make a difference.
I think so too. And like you said, we talked about earlier, there was a lot of one-goal hockey games. So if you see a little ray of sunshine there, and going to the rink is fun. Like we're talking about Manitoba Junior League hockey here, and it should be an exciting opportunity for these young players. And they do have a lot of young skill up in Swan Valley, and they do have a really good, well-supported community. And the barn is fun to play in. So if that's the mentality, if the culture is good and everybody's pulling the rope the same way, I don't see why the Swan Valley Stampeders couldn't have success this year. They have good returning players. It just seems like everything there is on the right track. So I would expect to see good positive happenings coming from up there this year.
Yeah, I will say though that this West Division looks really tough. It looks really tight and throughout. And I mean, if Swan takes another step, and we'll talk about the other teams throughout, but if Swan's going to be another team that takes a step, it's going to be hard for them to go through some of those teams that were above them last year, Benny. So you talk about the goaltending maybe being a bit of an issue. Why are Swan Valley going to take a step this year? Where do you see them being more dangerous and climbing up the ladder a little bit to that third or fourth spot in the division in the MGEU West Division?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just some of those guys taking steps forward. I think their depth is very good. I know they're not going to have those maybe top end scorers like the Brad Goethals, Josh Tripps they had back in the day, but I think they just have just a unit that can score. Each line can contribute, and I think their defense is going to take the next step. You got Darren Hunt, who's going to be a year older. You got Gavin Bartha, who's going to be a year older. You got some other young guys that come from U18 AAA in Alberta that they're really high on. So I think just the year of experience they're going to get. They're going to be bigger and stronger, and I think just the familiarity with each other, like Riley Fiquette, Jake Giacobo, and Ben Groom played together all of last year, pretty much the second half, and now they're going to be a NOP line. I know Jake's going to be out here for a little bit to start the season, but they're going to be familiar. So I think it's just the depth the Swan Valley Stampeders is going to have, and I think the defensive structure that Josh is putting in, and they want to be very good on the penalty kill. They want to be very good in their own zone, and then when you do that, I think the offenses that come from that, and I know goaltending maybe it was up and down last year. I know none of the goaltenders that were there last year will be returning. There's actually 3 newcomers right now in camp that they're pretty high on to see. But I know Easton Falls, who's a newcomer from Ontario, is a guy that's probably going to take the mail here to start the season. But their goaltending definitely needs to be better. But I think with the defensive play that Josh is implementing, I think that's going to help their goaltending. And of course, with the good defense comes good offense.
Yeah, and let's just call it what it is. You can't give up 40 shots a night and then say your goaltender didn't keep you in it, right? I mean, it's got to be a team effort, and goalies often get pointed at there, but it's going to be a team effort in front. And like you said, it looks like they're taking a step. And an interesting note, you guys are talking about AAA guys a lot. I think with the league being relatively younger, there are some teams returning a lot of guys. I think it's going to be a smoother transition for AAA guys. And I think we're going to see them really hit the ground running and be really skilled right off the hop. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how that kind of translates because it hasn't always in years past. I think this year might be different. We'll see young guys really doing some damage. And speaking of young guys, Benny, a guy or two that maybe we haven't heard of just yet that is going to end up being, a fan favorite in Swan, a household name around the MJHL. Is there a guy or two that stands out to you?
Yeah, we mentioned Easton Falls. I know he was a guy that was heavily recruited around the junior hockey ranks, and he elected to come to Swan River, which is great, and he's had a great camp. Finley Johnston up front, he's a forward from Langley, BC. He had a terrific year with the Langley AAA prep there last year, and very highly, he's probably going to fit into their top 6. You mentioned Crosby Harrison. Now Darnell mentioned him. They're really highly of him. A 2008 born product who had a tremendous year that he was also very, very close to making the Brandon Wheat Kings, and he came back to get some more experience here in Swan Valley. And then up on the back end, we mentioned Darren Hunt, but you have guys like Carson Connolly, Cade Bolding, who is a guy that attended Vancouver Giants training camp. He's a big 6'4" right shot defenseman from St. Albert, Alberta. So there's a few guys that definitely might take that next step forward here. But I think for Swan Valley, there's not a lot of newcomers to talk about, but those are a couple of guys that might insert a lineup to these veteran guys that they're definitely the coaching staff and the personnel there in Swan River want to take some steps forward.
Bodes well, though, that they got a lot of those returning guys that have the chip on the shoulder from last year. Manitoba Junior Hockey League 2025-26 season preview of the MGEU West Division. Kevin Pauls, we're going to task you with talking about the Neepawa Titans. Really interesting club. Again, I really am a big fan of Ken Pearson and all that he does there. He's building a really good program and a competitive one. Where do you see the Neepawa Titans kind of heading into the year? I know they didn't end the preseason necessarily the way they would have liked, but it's preseason, so who really cares? But where do you see the Neepawa Titans in this all of a sudden really crowded MGEU West Division?
Well, we talk about the Neepawa Titans being one of those teams that's a lunch pail team. They bring their work ethic. They're a hard team to play against night in, night out, and that's kind of indicative of how Kenny Pearson does things. And I think throughout the course of the preseason, he's probably trying stuff out. They've got a lot of new faces in camp there as well. So I'm imagining that come regular season, we're going to see an entirely different roster. But again, every year they've taken steps, the Titans have in the last few years, getting into the playoff picture, starting to become more and more of a threat. And with a changing Western MGEU conference, I think this is a good opportunity for the Titans to look for that next step as well. They've got some pretty big players there. They like their size, they like their physicality. So I expect to see good things out of Neepawa.
Darnell, we've seen this team kind of like on the precipice the last couple of years. And I think that a lot of times in playoff series, they're the fan favorite, although they might be the underdogs, and they've kind of played that role really well. But is this the year that Neepawa kind of needs to take a step and find some postseason success to help get that program to where it needs to be?
Yeah, I think that's 100% accurate, Dave. And I think it's going to come down to ultimately, you know him pretty well. Zach Burley started in Steinbach last year, then went over to French River in the NO and didn't really have that much success. I saw him once in the preseason this year. He looked okay. But after him, between the pipes, they're pretty thin because one of their top goaltenders from last year, Casey Cookett, is out until after Christmas with a mid body injury, and then also Matthew Mikta, who played with the Brandon Wheat Kings U18 club, is also out with a mid body injury. So they're probably going to be going with Alex Myers as the backup, and I don't know if Myers is yet up to the task of MJHL. Not taking anything away from him, but this is a league that is getting better and better year by year. These are elite athletes up front that are trying to score on you. So it's going to be interesting to see what Zach Burley can do. I just don't know. We've mentioned so much over the past years, the Titans are progressing. They're taking those next steps. They haven't had that playoff success. Last year, I mean, yes, they lost in 5 games against Norman, but that was a series that could have went either way. 4 of the games were 1 goal. They had a 2-goal lead in one of the games and lost as well. I'm just not sure if this is a Titans team that stacks up as well with other teams as they did last year. But I do agree with you. They do have to take that next step this year. I'm just not sure if they will.
Yeah, it's eventually got to be okay. Well, it could have gone either way. It eventually needs to go the Titans' way, right? Like that's what they're working towards, and they're bringing some really good pieces back. And Benny Walchuk, this team is always an interesting one to play against because you never really know the game that it's going to be. It can be wild and wide open. It can be, shot filled, but low scoring. That makes them a real wild card, doesn't it?
It does for sure. It's always interesting going to Neepawa. It's much warmer than it used to be when I first started, so that was great. So, but yeah, you never know. Sometimes the crowd's into it. Sometimes it's pretty quiet in that building, and you're not sure what to expect. But yeah, you're right. They're kind of like the Swan Valley Stampeders, the smaller ice surface. Got to use that big body, and they're a team that's going to have to score out by committee and get some good goaltending. Like I said, goaltending is maybe a question mark right now, and going into this season. But it's a team that has some talent. They have some guys have been there for a while. Kyle Weisgerber, a guy from Round Area, played his AAA here in Yorkton. He's been there for his 3rd year. You got a couple other guys that have been there for 2 or 3 years as well that need to take that step, and they need to be 40-point guys or 30-point guys. They need to be 50-point guys to have success. So it definitely is a wild card team to be. I'm not sure what to expect from them, but I think it's a team that definitely, if they do knock on the door to get in the playoffs, could be a tough out.
Yeah, and I'm a big Cooper Kasprick guy. Really great young man, good player, and they've really put the franchise on his shoulders, and he's going to go well beyond his time playing on the ice. I think he's going to be one of those guys that the franchise looks back on and says, be a Cooper Kasprick type of player. Kevin, with that being said, he's been around there for a while. I'm sure he's hungry to get, to the top of the mountain, start taking these steps. How much does that guidance and that kind of leadership factor into what the Titans can do this year and going forward?
I think it's very important. You have a lot of new players coming into the room. It's kind of like a standard, if this is what we expect in Neepawa Titans hockey, this is what we expect to follow. And with that type of leadership, then it becomes a little more commonplace and easy to spread around the room. And when you see guys leading by example, if it's work ethic off the ice in the weight room, or if it's, practicing as hard as you want to play in a hockey game, I think that's extremely important to lay that groundwork. They've got new guys coming in at defense. I think like we had talked about earlier. I think Benny mentioned it. You have to make the defense has to be the cornerstone of the group in order to make it easier for the goaltender. And then by transition, moving that into an offensive side of the puck, I think it's immensely important. And those 4-year players certainly make a difference and can set a winning pedigree ahead for the Neepawa Titans.
For a player to look out for, I actually spoke with him when he got traded. He's out of Hamiota. His name's Ty Kirk. He played with the Sioux Lookout Bombers last year, 28 points in 49 games. And he was really excited about the move, very excited to be traded. And there's something to be said about a player's excitement of going to a program. He's looking forward to being closer to home, playing in front of friends and family. And I think Ty Kirk for the Neepawa Titans is going to have a really solid season and help them get to where they want to go. And like we said, a very challenging MGEU West Division. Continuing on with the Manitoba Junior Hockey League MGEU West Division previews, let's go to the Virden Oil Capitals. In our broadcasters poll, they ended up being pretty high. They are pegged as the team that missed the playoffs last year to make the playoffs. Full disclosure, I voted for them in that category, and I also have them going to the Turnbull Cup Finals in the MGEU West Division. Darnell Duff is a guy that knows that maybe Virden is the place you're going to have to go through this year to find success. Just your thoughts of the Oil Capitals heading into this year.
I think this is almost guaranteed to be a playoff team, and a team that ultimately, I believe, will take a run. After a disappointing year last year where the Oil Caps missed the playoffs, which just hasn't really happened historically since they moved to Tundra Oil and Gas Place. But I think this is an Oil Capitals team that are welcoming back a lot of elite players, including Liam Gertzen, who had 35 points last year, played the second half with the Oil Caps. Noel Englot, I think he's going to take his game to the next level. He had 44 points last year. And one player I'm really intrigued about this year is a guy who was lit up all year last year, but also had a 60-plus save performance against the Dauphin Kings and Braxton Burnett. I think those numbers he has are completely skewed because he was seeing 65 to 70 shots a game. I've also seen him play some pretty good hockey. I think if you have a better defensive core and a better system in front of him, I think Braxton Burnett has the capability of maybe running away with it and being a goaltender that can make this Oil Capitals team and take them to the next level. So I think this is a Virden team that is a guaranteed lock for the playoffs this year. Not sure how far they'll go, but I think Tyson Ramsey's done a nice job of bringing back the returning players and also adding some folks to the foil, including London Hoylett, who's played a couple of years in the Western Hockey League. So he brings that WHL pedigree and experience down here to Junior A. So I think this is going to be a very good club. I always love going to Tundra Oil and Gas Place. I think they have a beautiful atmosphere in that arena. They have a lot of fans that come to support, a lot of heartful fans. So looking forward to seeing what the Oil Capitals can do this year. But I think this is a team that's based off production, and I think they're going to be able to produce a lot.
And I've always liked that Hoylett. I saw him in an MJHL summer showcase a number of years ago. He's a standout then. Didn't necessarily score in the Western League, but I think he's going to find that scoring touch in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. He had a really good preseason, and they're returning a lot of guys as well. And Kevin Pauls, for a team that was kind of underdogs last year, maybe didn't perform up to their standard last year, they're going to be the hunted this year, and that's a really quick turnaround. So just speak to how you expect them to adjust going from the team that surprised at times last year to the team that's going to have to be on their game every night this year.
Well, there's a lot of variables we're unaware of at any given time, but one thing I'm pretty confident with the Virden Oil Capitals is Tyson Ramsey's ability to pull these players together. Talking about London Hoylett and the fact that he's an X factor, he brings that skill, he brings that talent, and there's a number of other players up and down that roster that can contribute too. I expect great things out of Burdeni and net. He's proved he can stop the puck when faced with, the adversity of seeing a ton of rubber in a night, but the beauty of the Virden Oil Capitals is that they seem to refresh relatively quickly as well. They've got a fervent hockey supported community. I think that this is I think this league, this Western MGEU conference, has created kind of not a hockey vacuum, but a really competitive atmosphere. And any of these teams is going to have to find their way through it relatively quickly to find success. And I certainly expect good things from this team. And I'm going to admit it too. I picked these guys to win the Western Conference as well.
Benny Walchuk, as someone who's going to be going up against them a few different times this year, does Virden have the scoring to be dangerous on a nightly basis? Like Darnell said, Verdeni's going to keep them in. If you only give up 30 shots, he'll be really, really solid. But do they have the scoring to be in that top tier against a Dauphin, against a Waywayseecappo, against some of the beasts in the East? Do you think on paper right now heading in, Virden has enough scoring? As Benny, we're going to get you to unmute yourself. We'll then tee up.
Yeah, definitely. Noel Inglotz is a guy that's going to take that step forward. And I think they're very, very close to being at that. I know they still got some rooms to add some veteran guys or some 20-year-olds as well to their roster. I think Marshall Light is a guy from Mooseman. He's going to take another step forward. And we mentioned Liam Gertz, and I was impressed when Swan Valley went to Winnipeg and we played the Blues last year. And the Winnipeg teams there. He was very, very good. And the guy that was wanting my teams to try to acquire here because he was definitely a guy that had some offensive talent playing on a lower team. And then we talk about defense, and these guys probably have one of the most maybe depth and most veteran blue lines. You got Ty Plazier coming back. You got Ryland Baxter coming back. You got so on and so forth on their back end. They're going to take some steps forward. So I think it's a team that's, like you said, I think Braxton Berderny was playing on not a very good team and faced a lot of shots, but I think the talent's there. When he faces 30 shots, he's definitely not gonna wear out as much. He's gonna be more fresher as the season goes on, and I think it's a team that's gonna definitely rely on their power play like they have the last number of years. And those special teams, that power play, if you take penalties against Virden, they're definitely gonna make you pay.
We're gonna ask you this. Does Virden need to get off to a good start to have that confidence, or do you believe this group, who's mature enough now, they're older, obviously, guys coming back from last year, Tyson Ramsey, very experienced coach. Does Virden need to get off to a good start to have that confidence, or do you think if they kind of, go up and down through the first 5-10 games, that they're going to be strong enough to right the ship, put it back on the tracks, and be able to roll from there? Just take us through about the Virden mentality and the confidence with the expectations this year.
Well, seeing as we're speaking so highly about the Oil Capitals, and rightfully so, but also at the same time, the parity that we're going to see in the MGEU West Division, I think it's critical not only for the Oil Capitals, but for every single team to get off to a good start. Because if you falter early on, even if you're only picking up 4 wins out of your first 10 games, you're going to fall back in the standings. And as the season goes on and teams improve, it is only that much harder to jump up as you go on. You look at Swan Valley last year, a disastrous start. They got better in the second half, but they played so poorly in the first half and got off to those struggles, you could not jump back. So yes, of course, for Virden, I think it's important. It's perhaps even critical to get off to a good start, but I think it goes for the same for every team in the MGEU West Division. If you want to have hopes of finishing in the top 2 and getting home ice in the first round of the playoffs, and perhaps even further into the second and the Turnbull Cup final, I think it's all about starting on time and getting yourself into a good spot starting on Friday night.
A young player that stands out to me is Lucas Laramie out of LaBrokery. He's a 2008. He went to a WHL camp. He came back to Virden, played his way onto the team. He's a goal scorer. He's a team first guy. And I think we're going to see a lot of that when you describe the Virden Oil Capitals team first guys. And I think that carries over from last year. Ty Plazier named captain really early in the summer. And I think they've got a really good identity cooking there with Tyson Ramsey and the Virden Oil Capitals. And I think we can all agree, Tundra Oil and Gas Place is definitely a must stop on your Manitoba Junior Hockey League calendar, if nothing else, so you don't have to watch them on Flow Hockey. Manitoba Junior Hockey League, West Division, MGEU West Division. The Manitoba Junior Hockey League, MGEU West Division preview. Dave Anthony, Darnell Duff, Kevin Pauls, and Benny Walchuk. We're breaking down each team in this very, very hard-fought division. Benny, let's talk Waywayseecappo Wolverines. We talk about some of the heavy hitters in this division, and now all of a sudden, very quietly, Wayway has put themselves in that category. There is a lot of buzz with the Wolverines. Take us through your thoughts.
Yeah, exactly. Talking to Landon Cochran, the head coach and general manager, before they start their training camp here earlier this month, his expectations are pretty high. Like, he was excited with how the offseason goes. They got, of course, the biggest acquisition was getting Ben Roulette back, and we know how dominant Ben can be in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. He had almost 50 points a couple of years ago. Went away, but he came back, and he didn't get as much ice time as the other place he played last year. So you wanted to come back. And then you add in guys. You got Sebastian Stone. You got Soul and so forth coming back. You got Dylan Duzan, who's going to take another step. You have Cole Hunter, who's only a 2008 born player, and he had a great year last year. Of course, he committed to NCAA last year as well. So they got some guys that are definitely only got Sebastian Hicks, also a big centerman as well. So there's lots of guys and lots of excitement coming back. The biggest thing is going to be their back end's pretty inexperienced. I know Maddox Mason's going to lead the way there on the back end. So they're pretty experienced on the back end. And their goaltending, they do return back to goaltenders. Jace Wareham has been there for now a third and fourth season. And you also have Mariko Bercier is back as well for a second season after a great run he had last year for the hockey club. And that's by the goaltending position. Those two guys have been pretty inconsistent though, as last year, especially Jace Wareham down the stretch, and that's why the youngster took the reins here down the playoff run. So it's one of those teams that the expectations are high, but they still have to prove it. I think they'll be able to score goals, and Waywayseecappo is always a tough place to play, so I think they'll be very, very good there. But it's just if they're going to be able to defend and keep the puck out of their net's going to be a big factor for them.
Yeah, Darnell Duff with the Dauphin Kings. The question for me when it comes to Wayway, because Benny just alluded to it, they're going to score. Are they going to score enough? Can they score themselves out of issues that are going to come up throughout a season when you're facing some heavy hitting teams? Can Wayway score enough to be effective on a nightly basis?
You know what? This is a team, Dave, that really, really, really interests me and intrigues me heading into this season. Bercier, this guy, he could be one of the best goaltenders, not only in the MGEU West Division, but the MGEU East Division. Not taking anything away from Wareham, who's a veteran guy. He's earned his stripes in this league, but I just think Bercier, being a young player who started at Brooks Bandits camp, I think he's going to have a tremendous season. Last year in the first round against Dauphin, probably shouldn't have been as close as it was, but Bercier was there. Then they added a player who played last year with Prairie Hockey Academy, the U18 team. He had 14 goals and 42 assists, Henry Thunderblanket. I think this guy is going to be a player to watch across the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. Then, of course, Ben Roulette, has Benny mentioned, 49 points a couple of years ago. He had 30 points last year in the North American Hockey League. They love him down there. A ton of fan support. I think this is a good hockey club, a very good hockey club, a club that is certainly going to take a next step from last year. And of course, I think having Landon Cochran, now he's starting to settle in. Now he understands and knows what it takes and how hard it is to build a very good and elite hockey club in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. I think he's starting to settle. Things are going to be hot in Waywayseecappo. It's one of my favorite arenas to go to. I think they got an awesome broadcasting booth. The horn, you can hear it from Main Street in that community. But I think this is a Wayway team that really intrigues me, and I think they're going to be a team to watch in the league this year.
Yeah, you just say that horn, and I think a few of us get a little we could hear it ring, and that's absolutely true. Kevin Paul's just Benny brought it up, Darnell alluded to it as well, but guys coming back to Waywayseecappo. Guys want to go back there for whether it's their final year at junior or if it doesn't work out somewhere else. Guys want to go back there. What does that do for team confidence? Guys that were there last year that kind of struggled, went up and down. What does that do for that team's kind of mentality that we're a place that talented players want to play again?
Well, they're well supported. I think if you go to a place you feel comfortable in, and everybody that I've spoken to that has worked or played there, you talk to a guy like Matthew Higgs, he's, a very positive guy for a reason. They're well supported there, and it's a great hockey club. And looking at their roster, they're going to be young. They're probably going to have a lot of fun. And I think they're going to throw a wrench into a lot of teams' plans when they come in and out of that rink. I think they're going to make it hard to play against them. And I think they're going to play a fast, exciting style of hockey, which the fans there love to watch. I think it's just there's a lot of good vibes coming from Wayway. And I think we're all going to benefit from watching as well.
Absolutely. Benny, we've talked about this with teams that are looking to take a step, and especially with this broadcasters poll that, it does get a lot of attention. Teams, players, they take notice of that sort of stuff. So now Waywayseecappo's a team that's kind of circled a little bit as, one you can't sleep on, one you got to be paying attention to. How are they going to deal with being, a team now that's more focused on the other teams believe are going to be dangerous? How are they going to deal with being the hunted?
It's got to play some disciplined hockey, that's for sure. I know you get to Waywayseecappo sometimes. You talk about the atmosphere, and that can almost get to the players a little bit. It gets a little bit too much loose and a little bit more wild. Just got to stay consistent. You got to take advantage of. It's like Landon alluded to it last year. They took some nights off that they shouldn't have, and it costed them going forward. So they can't take those nights off against the teams they have to beat. They can't take the teams lightly. Like any team that's higher caliber, they always do to play down to your opponent. They can't do that, and they got to play consistent hockey. Can't have one game good, one game bad. They got to stay consistent and play discipline. That's the biggest thing. Discipline and play good defensive hockey, because I think the goals are going to come. They got some guys that can score up front. I think their back end is going to take some steps forward as the season goes on. So it's just about being a discipline, being good on the special teams, and getting good goaltending, because if you don't get good goaltending, it's going to be a long year.
Yeah, and we've talked about with how crowded this is going to be in the MGEU West Division. I don't think you can necessarily make the playoffs, late September into October, but you can miss the playoffs if you don't have a good September and October. So it's maybe just going to be about carving out points, battling, putting some points in the bank throughout those first couple of weeks. That's going to be really important to long-term success. So Waywayseecappo is going to need to get off to a good start. Benny, is there a young player or two that jumps off the page for you as someone that we should be paying attention to and that Waywayseecappo fans are going to enjoy?
Yeah, absolutely. I know Darnell alluded to him, Henry Thunderblanket, who was actually in Malva Millionaire camp here before he was released from camp, and he ended up in Waywayseecappo. He's a guy that has lots of skill. Work ethic maybe isn't there as much as coaches would like, but I think as he gets going in junior hockey, I think it's going to come, and he's going to be a very talented name familiar in the MJHL ranks. Of course, Cade Leegarden. Of course, his brother Jace was a superstar with the Winkler Flyers. He moved on after his 20-year-old season last year. He's a guy that they're going to rely on as well, and a guy that's maybe not a rookie in the league, but Trayson Watney, a guy that played with Battleford last year, has some time with the Edmonton Oil Kings of the Western Hockey League. He's a 19-year-old acquired from Battleford's in a trade this offseason. I think he's going to play in that top line or even the top 6 units, and I think he's going to have to be a guy they're going to rely on to contribute offensively. And we talked about the young guys, like we talk about Cole Hunter. I think he's going to be a name that's going to continue to impress going forward. So it's one of those things. It's going to be it's an experienced back end. We talked about only one player in that defense unit right now is 19 years of age. The rest are 18 and 17. So it's a very young back end. But I think with those guys, with guys like Brody Heimbecker coming in from the Yorkton Maulers program, Colleen Pilkington from U18 AAA in Manitoba as well, they're going to take some bigger roles maybe than they're accustomed to maybe in other teams they joined. So it's a team that's going to need these rookie guys to step up and add that depth scoring, because we talk about how depth is important in league.
It's amazing. We've been previewing the MGEU West Division, and there's a lot of hype around all the teams. And there's only 4 that are going to make the playoffs. There's no, 5th place crossover. There's just the top 4. This is going to be a really fun division to watch from game 1 all the way throughout the regular season. The Manitoba Junior Hockey League MGEU West Division preview continues with the defending Turnbull Cup champion, Northern Manitoba Blizzard. On paper, it looks like it may be a cold year up there, pun fully intended. But Kevin Pauls, this is one of those teams that has always defied expectations. Every time you think they're down, they're never out. And while maybe everybody's looking, wondering what they're doing up there with a new staff, maybe they've put together that sneaky good roster that can surprise a lot of teams.
Well, I think now that they've won a championship, we talk about those soft landing spots, and everybody knows to be aware of the Norman Blizzard moving forward. They set a really good foundation last year. It's a great rink to play in. The fans up there are hungry for, successful hockey teams, and I think that could definitely be the case. And in what could be a very tightly contested MGEU Western Conference, I think why couldn't they have the success as well? They've got some returning players that bring that championship experience and stuff they've learned. So I think anything's possible, and the Norman Blizzard now present a really interesting piece in this Western Conference.
Yeah, and I know you're a big fan of Lane Apperly. They pulled off a pretty sizable move, moving out Bernier Krestanovich out, and then they brought Lane Apperly in. I know you're a big fan of him, and you start looking at that defense core. I mean, Luke Bourdon, he's there. You got Kelton Kellerman. All of a sudden that defense is a little bit better. But Darnell Duff with the Dauphin Kings, it's going to be tough for them because they don't have their star goaltender. Tate Timmerman has been it's been announced he has made the Saskatoon Blades opening night roster. Now the Blizzard have found goaltenders in the past, and I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about their two-headed tandem this year, but goaltending is going to be the straw that stirs the drink there, and it's a question mark.
100%, without a doubt. And yes, they have found goaltenders in the past. We go to last year, Tate Timmerman. He had no junior experience coming into the year, but let's not forget what he did in AAA the year before. He won the goalie of the year in Manitoba. This year, they have Kevin Podgurdny, who played in the USPHL Premier last year, 9-3 playing in Wisconsin. And then they have Tyson Endell, who spent time with the Calgary Canucks, sometime with the Nipawin Hawks, and played a lot last year in the KIJHL. So it's a complete unknown what a USPHL Premier goalie is going to be able to do in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League. And with Endell, he's had some time at the junior A level, but hasn't really had any success. Was okay last year in the KIJHL. So maybe those two goaltenders will find their way and be outstanding goaltenders. But Norman is already playing behind the eight ball because no, they didn't think last year going into the season that Tate Timmerman was going to be as good as Double T was until after Christmas. And the guy was just an absolute stud, leading them to the Centennial Cup. But they're already behind the eight ball. It's going to be interesting to see how and if they can get over that bubble, because this is a drastic turnover. MJHL and junior A teams always have turnover, but I only see 3 full-time returning players from this team last year, and no guys were real big impact players last year. So this is pretty drastic for a team that won the MGHL 1 year ago.
It might be a tough start, but they might be that program that gets like the shot in the arm throughout the year when this guy comes back, or this guy pops. I mean, there's a lot of ifs, and it looks like on paper it's going to be a bit of a struggle to start. And Benny, a lot of young players are going to get an opportunity to really grow at the MJHL level. And that's experience that the Blizzard are going to maybe benefit from long term, because we see how they won. They had a lot of guys with long-term experience that were in the league at a young age. So maybe this is just the next start of the cycle.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about the netmindering, and who knows? Like Tate Timmerman is right now. There's 3 goaltenders in Saskatoon, and one of them is going to attend NHL training camp. So we'll see if they're just holding those 3 guys around just to have him around. So we'll see if he does return or not. Well, hopefully for the best for him at the Western Hockey League level. So we'll see what that happens. I've seen Tyson Endell play with the Nipawin Hawks. He's a guy that's maybe a little inconsistent, but when he's on, he is on. Like, he's tough to beat. He's a big netminder, almost 6'4". So he's a big netminder, and he's gonna have to definitely be called upon to steal some games here early on. But like you said, experience is great in the league. We talk about championship experience or MJHL playing experience. Experience is one of the best skills you can have as a player. Yes, skill is there and toughness, but experience goes a long way. And with some of these young guys that we didn't know a lot about, some of these guys that Eric brought in last year, and they hit some bounds, and they were very good players. We didn't know much about Quincy Cyprien coming in from Quebec, and he was a all-star with the Blizzard. So it's guys that maybe we don't know about right now, but yeah, it might be a struggle to start the season and for this year, but that sometimes to win a championship, you got to go through some growing pains the next couple of years and build up. And there's a new man, Ty Vallon, is there to lead his roster, and he's going to bring his guys in. So it's going to be maybe a year or 2 before this roster gets instructed, but it's definitely a team that you can't take lightly, like we talked about.
And they have a really passionate fan base as well that are going to stick with them through the lows so they can get riding back to the highs, which is really exciting. Kevin Paul's just kind of looking around Blizzard country. Is there a guy or 2 that stands out to you? They have a lot of 07s, a couple of 05s, no 08s up front, which is a little surprising, but a lot of those players that are right on the cusp of maybe doing something pretty dangerous. Just, is there anybody's name that pops out to you from the Northern Manitoba Blizzard?
Well, I mean, for a team that's doing a complete turnaround here, it's going to be kind of a wild card scenario. Like we talked about, like my big player. Let's talk about Lane Apperley here. He's the guy that I'm familiar with, and everybody loves him. He's such a good kid, has such a good locker room presence, and I think he's going to go in there and make the rink a fun place to be. So I'm pretty high on Lane. I'm super happy he has an opportunity to go up there and get a lot of minutes and hone his craft as a defenseman. So I think this is a scenario where it's a lot of new things that are going to be happening up there in the paw, and I think it's a good place to kind of start in the locker room. And Lane's that guy to lead the charge, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just some quick notes on the Blizzard. We mentioned Tay Timmerman announced to the Saskatoon Blades opening night roster. My sources indicate that Benson Hurst is going to be making the Moose Jaw Warriors at least to start the year, and that Alexander Andre is going to be making the Wenatchee Club in the WHL as well. So, again, that's just to start the year. All of a sudden, if they start coming back down, they start making some moves, it could be really interesting up there in northern Manitoba. So, gentlemen, Darnell Duff, Dauphin Kings, Kevin Paul's general MJHL knowledge, and Benny Walchuk, the king of all MJHL media. Let's go to the MGEU West Division playoff predictions. So, gentlemen, we're going to get you to pick the top 4 teams that you believe in the MGEU West that are going to make the playoffs this year. And yes, we're going to make you put them in 1, 2, 3, and 4. And yes, we will hold this over your head all year long. As we all know, before you play a regular season game, it's great to try and predict the playoffs. Darnell Duff, let's start with you. Your top 4 MGEU West teams.
I think the top three is going to be an absolute battle. I think it's going to come down to perhaps the last couple of weeks of the season. I'm gonna give the Kings first place in the MGEU West Division. Not trying to be biased here, of course. Nobody questions what team I cheer for or call hockey games for, but just being a general fan of hockey and knowing the depth of this Dauphin Kings roster, what they brought back from last year, the heartbreak they went through, that experience, and not wanting that to happen again and solidify a top spot heading into the playoffs. I take the Kings in 1. I'm taking the Virden Oil Capitals. Check that. I'm going to take the Waywayseecappo Wolverines in second place. I think Bercier is going to light it up this year. Ben Roulette. I think the Wolverines are going to be a really good team at the Waywayseecappo Arena Complex. I think they're going to be able to scratch and claw their way on the road to some success. The Virden Oil Capitals are a playoff team, really close. I think there could be 6 to 8 points of separation between these 3 teams combined. Taking Virden in third place, a little bit of a dip, but locking in fourth place this year. Good times, I think, happen in the Swan River with the Stampeders. I think they got off to a decent start this season, try to ride that momentum, see if they can figure out what the situation is between the pipes. But I do think the Swan Valley Stampeders, led by Josh Tripp, get back to the Turnbull Cup playoffs.
Interesting. So, Darnell, you've got Dauphin 1, Wayway 2, Virden 3, Swan 4. Benny Walchuk, will go to you as one of our MGEU West Division experts. Your thoughts on playoff teams 1 through 4?
Yeah, I think this teams that Darnell said are pretty close to what I have. I'm going to go Virden number 1. I think just the way they built right now, and they get Braxton and Berderny between the pipes, and it's just it's a big team that's going to be hard to play against the expectations there. So I'm going to go with number 1. 2, I'm going to go with Swan Valley. I think Easton Falls and their goaltending is going to be answered. And I think like Ben Groom could be one of the best players in the MJHL. He's very, very smooth. He's got that mold of maybe like a Trey Sauter, not as strong as Trey, but I think he's got that mold, a bit of Trey, be a nice little playmaker if they can find him. Right now, Swan Valley is going in with 2 or 3 20-year-olds right now, so there's room to add a handful more 20-year-olds if they want to here before the season starts. So I think they're going to take a step forward with more of experience back in. I'm going to go with Dauphin number 3. Like I said, Darnell, they were one of the best teams in the West Division. They were the best team in the West Division, made all the way back to the final. I think they're going to be a tough team to play against. And I'm going to Waywayseecappo number 4. Like they're going to take another step forward. I think when they get into the playoffs, maybe end the 4th place right now, but I think Waywayseecappo has got some talent. They can score enough, and if they can find that goal tonight, I think they're going to sneak in.
Right, Kevin Pauls, you and I are in the unique vantage point of just getting to watch this division. And we talked about it when we did the MGEU East. One of the great things about this panel is with Darnell and Benny and yourself, and it's just so interesting how perspectives can kind of change. And maybe I'm not as high on some teams as I was before we started this, which is really cool. So I'm really excited to know your 1 through 4 in the MGEU West division.
Well, just the insight these panels provide, some of the things, the variables we're unaware of are so intriguing to me. And yeah, you're right. Maybe my opinion has shifted a little bit, but, just judging from what I see, I'm going to pick the Virden Oil Capitals at number 1. There's some smoke signals coming out of Virden, Manitoba, and I think they're going to be a very dangerous and talented young group led by Tyson Ramsey. So I'm picking them at number 1. The Dauphin Kings at number 2 because they're perennial winners. Doug Headley has a really good handle on things. I know their staff has shifted a little bit, but there's some good things happening up in Dauphin as well. So I expect those teams to lead the way. Now, 3 and 4, I think becomes a little bit more of a murky water to try and peer through to see what the future has in store, but I'm going to change things up a little bit. I see good things happening in Waywayseecappo. I think they're going to be a really good hockey team, hard to play against. I think they're going to lock down number 3. And I know this is going to be an unconventional pick, but the beauty is I don't have a horse in this race, so to speak. I'm going to go with the Northern Manitoba Blizzard here at number 4. I think there's too many good players out in the Western Hockey League that may or may not return. There's a chance they could come back, and there's certainly a chance that they could return to their winning form here. I'm picking the Northern Manitoba Blizzard at number 4.
I would move the laptop down to show that you've blown my socks off, but I don't want you to see me in my dress sweatpants. So we'll just take my word for it, Kevin. That is a bit of a surprise. Interesting pick, but again, like it's one of those things where it's so up in the air. It could really go any way. My top 4, I'm going to stick with the Virden Oil Capitals at 1. I really like them. Again, top through bottom. I'm now higher on Swan Valley after this panel, which, like you said, Kevin, it's really interesting when you hear the perspectives and you get some of the details. So I'm going to put Swan Valley number 2. I think I'm going to go Waywayseecappo number 3. But Benny's point about defense is right, and I wonder about the depth scoring there. So that's going to be a little more interesting for me. And then number 4, I'm going Neepawa. I like Ken Pearson's program. I like what they're doing there. I think it's going to come down to the final week. And Darnell, I'm only saying Neepawa because I haven't really paid attention to Dauphin. I know they're kind of sneaky good, but they did lose Cole Sheffield. There is some worry about the back end. So I'm going to go with Neepawa here on in mid-September, and you can make fun of me all year long as it ends up being Dauphin near the top of the standings, and you can say I told you so right from the start. But no matter what, I think this panel, which was different from the MGEU East panel, is that there's really no consensus here. Sure, there's maybe a couple of teams near the top, but any team can be in that 3-4 spot, and I think there's not going to be a lot of discrepancy from spots 4, 5, and 6. You're not going to see a massive drop off like maybe you will elsewhere. So really interesting stuff. Darnell Duff of the Dauphin Kings, Kevin Paul's MJHL insider aficionado, bearded wonder, and then Benny Walchuk, the only one of us that has got a full-length photo of him on a door in his home rink. Thank you very much for doing this today, gentlemen. Appreciate your time.
Right on. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.